What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the BMR NBA show. My name is Junior Browne, and I'm joined, as always, by the homie, Jordan Sharp. Glad to be here talking basketball. It's the one thing that can certainly brighten up my day. So before I get into last night's games, I actually want to hear Jordan's opinion because I'm feeling good right now, and I don't want yesterday's games to salt my mood. So, Jordan, what are your thoughts about last night?
Yeah, man, 5-game slate last night. There was some wild action, to say the least. I'll just start in chronological order. The Knicks winning that game the way they did, it was a little bit surprising. There's obviously more going on in Philadelphia than just the Ben Simmons thing. This team has question marks a mile long. Oklahoma City looked like Oklahoma City through about 3 quarters, maybe yesterday, like 2.5 quarters. And then Golden State basically said, get out of my way, young guys. Obviously, they still got the cover, but Golden State ended up sneaking away with the win when they probably shouldn't have. And then, of course, my pick, man, I can't even gloat because I did get 4.5, so I ended up covering, but not many people did. But you either pretty much pushed or you lost with the way that game ended. Oh, God, Keita Bates-Diop. When you're down 4 in overtime and you have less than 20 seconds on the clock and you have the ball and you're in the bonus, you go to the basket. You don't just lollygag up the court looking for somebody to pass it to, dude. You got to score. You're down 2 possessions. Dunk the ball. They don't want to foul you. Get the ball in the basket, and the dude just gets it poked away and ruins it for everybody. That should have been a pretty easy cover, or at least a little bit more of a sweat, pushing the Lakers to 2 free throws there at the end of the game. That just sucks the way that ended. I knew at the end of the overtime I was probably screwed. I was like, this is they and the theme of this one, and you know what I'm about to get to, is that these young teams are going to look good through 3 quarters, but winning time is the last 12 minutes of an NBA game. It's more specifically the last 5 or 6 minutes. And it just didn't work. It's case in point, Houston looking like they were going to cover easily through 3 quarters. And then they ended up making it a sweat. And then, of course, the Denver Nuggets, the team that really nobody counts as a young team, even though they really are a young team, just absolutely blew it there at the end. Man, I am so sorry. There was just so many underdogs yesterday. It should have cashed easily, and they didn't. And I'm just a little upset about it, man. I'm sure you're feeling the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super annoyed. I'm actually, what's funny? Like, those games that you pick, like Houston plus 10.5, where everyone hates the pick and it comes through. Those picks are super sweet to me. So when I hit that, I was like, you know what? This night didn't go the way I wanted. I went 1 and 2 of my official show picks. The Lakers barely missed covering that first half. Well, they seemed like they were going to do it, and they weren't. The Nuggets kind of collapsed, not because they let Utah score 31, because they scored 20 points of their own. Listen, with Denver, their shot selection is a bit of an issue. Like guys like Will Barton, who are what people call, one of those irrational confidence guys. The variance is going to kick you in the balls with Denver sometimes. I still feel like I was on the right side of that play because Denver was going toe-to-toe with Utah for 43 minutes or something. Like, for most of that game, they were right there. They actually looked like they were going to cover easily, and then all of a sudden they weren't. Let's talk about today.
Yeah, let's move on. I don't want to linger either. Yeah, I don't want to linger.
Let's get to today's slate. It's a new day, new opportunity to make money. But I will finish talking about last night by saying something that you mentioned that is so true because it's burned me a couple of times. Young teams don't know how to close games. Yeah. If Charlotte knew how to close games, I would have hit that money line pick with them against Boston the day before. So that's definitely a theme to look out for as you're capping these games. With that in mind, today's a fresh day and another opportunity to put some money in our pockets. So let's go over today's slate. Remember, y'all are ready.
I'm super interested to see what you have to say about this first game because this is my favorite game of the night. Easily the one we got to lead off the slate with here tonight. 2 of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, the Miami Heat, the Brooklyn Nets. Nets laying 3.5 at home, but it was 4. I remember it was 4. I saw it at 4. There's a little money coming in on those Heat guys, and it doesn't surprise me. But the one thing I think concerns me, and I want to get your opinion on this real quick because I don't have a play on this game. I just want to watch it. Super excited to sit down and see, kind of benchmark these 2 teams a little bit. Are the Heat going to have enough offense if, like, their main guys like Butler and Lowry are just glued to James Harden and Kevin Durant all night? Like, are they going to have the energy to be like two-way successful tonight and give Miami that push offensively? And if not, is the under the play here in this one? Because that's kind of what I'm teetering back and forth here, because that's been the one catching the most steam here. You're talking about something I think it opened at 220 last night. Now you're staring at 217.5. So that one is one I am a little bit sad I missed out on. I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Van, but I kind of want to lean towards the Heat, but I'm a little scared that it's putting a little bit too much pressure on the young guys who've been obviously stepping up, like no doubt about it. But tonight's the real deal. Tonight's that second round playoff matchup that you guys are trying to set up here against this Brooklyn Nets team, who's still down one of their best players, obviously. So we're gonna have to take that in mind as well. Super interested to see what you have to say on this one, but no play for me.
It's Brooklyn or nothing for me, and I'm not ready to disrespect the Heat. So, and I don't all the way believe in Brooklyn either. Not to say that I don't believe in them overall. I'm just talking about right now, so far this season. When I look at their offense, and that's what I've been trying to do in the early part of the season, just kind of figure out what are these offensive sets that these teams run. Brooklyn doesn't really. Like, Brooklyn runs some super basic sets and just kind of relies on Kevin Durant and James Harden's offensive ability. And I think when you're playing against a team like Miami, you're going to need way more nuance than that. Because if that's your plan, you're kind of playing right into their hands, which is why I'm not ready to lay the points with Brooklyn. Now, on the flip side, the Heat still don't convince me. I'm sorry to say that. We saw 2 years ago when there were still fans in the building. They are absolutely not the same team on the road as they are at home. So I still need to see way more of a sample size of them playing road games to see that that's no longer a thing. Because last year, obviously, you couldn't really gauge that. The last live basketball game I went to was Brooklyn at Miami, where Kevin Durant started off on fire and then got hurt in the first quarter, and my bet got ruined. And when you're in a live game and your bet gets ruined, your day is ruined. Because
you're just $10, $12 beers, like line them up basically after that.
Oh, dude, I think I told you guys this. Homeboy next to me threw up on himself.
Yeah,
I mean, it was horrible. So getting back to this game at hand, though, Miami in their last two games have scored 107 points against a pretty trash Orlando team, and 91 points against the Pacers. Now, they did put up a $137 against the Bucks, with no pun intended, but that was a weird situation where Milwaukee was down 42-17 in the first quarter, and it just got progressively worse. So Milwaukee was never in that game at any point, because I watched that game. It was like, at one point, it was like 23-2. So that was one of those things where every single thing went right for Miami. And since then, they've been pretty below average on offense. And think about it. They scored 107 points in the last game, and Jimmy Butler had 36. So I need to see more from them. The Nets are definitely a get-right spot if your offense is struggling. That's for sure. But I do think that there might be some value in the under, although the steam is kind of making me think otherwise. I guess it's a super long-winded way of saying I'm going to be watching this game as a fan and as a capper in terms of just trying to learn who these teams are, because you have to think for Brooklyn, this is like a real litmus test of who they are, in the sense that they played their direct opponents in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee they lost to. Philly they came back and beat. And now they're playing, which essentially would be the fourth best team in the East, right? So they're basically playing all of their direct opponents in the first 5 to 10 games of the season. I expect an A game from both Harden and Durant, and I would love a Durant prop, because if you don't think that Durant is looking at PJ Tucker like F PJ Tucker, all this PJ Tucker can guard me nonsense, you'd be sadly mistaken, because once that became a narrative, what did Kevin Durant do? He turned into Superman and literally started lighting PJ Tucker up every single game, other than the games in Milwaukee where I feel like he wasn't really getting a favorable whistle. So this game's in Brooklyn. I'm pretty interested in a Kevin Durant prop if you've got one. But in terms
I
of
can check and see what it is real quick.
Yeah, in terms of a side, I've got nothing. So let's move on to this next game. Another interesting game. Not because I think the outcome is interesting, but I think the spread is interesting. We got the Hawks headed down to Nolens to take on the New Orleans Pelicans, who are a little bit better than people think they are, if I'm going to be honest with you. Me personally, it would be Hawks or nothing because it's under that magic number for me of 6. That being said, the Hawks are better, but are they so much better that I'm laying 6 on the road with them? I might need to pump your brakes because I'm not into any of that at all. The total I do think is worth a look, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts first, Jordan. What's up?
Yeah, so I wrote this one up for BMR. You can go ahead and check it out. We got a lot of games to talk about, so I don't want to ruin it too much. I'll give you guys the courtesy of clicking, and you can view my thoughts on it a little bit longer. But basically, you're right. The Pelicans are not that bad, but they're not that bad on defense. On offense, that's another story right now without Zion. I think they're like a middle-of-the-road offense kind of with Zion. Without him right now through 4 games, they're 26th in offensive efficiency. And they're going up against the defense. It's usually something you don't think about when you talk about the Hawks. They've actually been really solid on defense this year. And the fact that they also, I think Lou Williams and Danilo Gallinari are both questionable. So 2 offensive weapons that obviously could not be a factor tonight potentially if they don't play, which means more of our guy DeAndre Hunter just absolutely glued, locked into Brandon Ingram tonight. I don't think the Pelicans are going to have a very easy time scoring the basketball tonight. It's simple as that. I got the under at 220.5. I think it's just down at 220, 219.5. I still like it at that. There's a very distinct possibility the first half of this one's just extremely low scoring. So I also, personal play, but not official here for the show I have an under in the first half as well. Simply because it's just the Pelicans could be, if the Hawks really get into them defensively tonight, plus the fact they have a game tomorrow, so they're really incentivized to kind of like try to get this game over with as early as possible. I think that they hold the Pelicans under their team total in the first half. I think it's like 54, 55, something like that. Like there's a lot, I think, under potential here in this game. But for me, official for the show, under 220.5.
Yeah, I don't really have too much more to add to that. For me, I would be tailing Jordan's play if I was going to look at this game, and I might later on. It's still pretty early in the day, so I'd like to, spend more time analyzing these numbers and trying to look for an edge, which I don't see yet, but I do like Jordan's look for sure. Let's move on to the next game. Another game that should be pretty interesting. I do have a look on this game. I'm actually taking the total under for a couple of different reasons. Let's start with Mr. Glass, Anthony Davis, playing like 42 minutes last night. There is absolutely no way he comes close to over 35 minutes or over. Reduced minutes for Anthony Davis means reduced output for the Lakers. I don't even know what LeBron James' status is, and I don't really care, honestly. Not to say that it's not important, but I feel like there's a lot of fake news surrounding his injury status just in general. So he definitely likes to play coy with whether or not he's going to play. And in terms of Oklahoma City, it's pretty simple. To say they are offensively challenged would be me being super, super nice. And against a Lakers team that, if anything, they're going to bring some defensive effort for no other reason that they don't have a choice. Their offense is so wish-washy right now, so inconsistent. That they have to bring the defensive effort, which doesn't require much against this Thunder team. On the flip side, the Thunder only have defense to lean on, and I'm saying that in theory because in reality, their defense is trash right now. I don't see any way 2 teams last night get involved in an up-and-down, free-flowing game. I think this is going to be one of the uglier games of the night, and I've got the under. Jordan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of lean that way as well. I was going to think about this one as an underplay as well for those exact reasons. I don't think Davis plays tonight. Saw him go down, kind of bang knees. It's funny, though, that they did have a back-to-back and LeBron was sitting the night before, so you got to think like maybe they were planning to rest Davis anyways for tonight. But then like he went down like with his knee injury, and you thought, oh my God, like he got hurt going up. Like what in the world just happened? Like this could ruin the Lakers season. And, he lays on the ground. He gets up, kind of hobbles off. You think, okay, like he seems to be all right. And then they do a lob for him the next play. Like, you're not fooling anybody, Los Angeles. Like, everybody is watching you do this. So, I mean, like, it seems like, they're just trying to get away from getting fined or, I'm just here to not get fined type of thing with that. I think Davis does have a chance to sit tonight, potentially LeBron coming back. But the fact that we're just talking about this makes me just want to move past this game because there's so much else on the slate tonight that I don't need to play the will they, won't they with the Lakers this evening. I do like your play, though, because the fact that they could rest one or both of their stars even just that slight chance makes the line pretty valuable, especially like you said, because the defense is still going to be there potentially, and the back-to-back should at least play a small role and potentially some of these shots coming up short. So, yeah, I kind of like where you're going in this one. It's not official for me, but I definitely lean that way as well.
It's funny, and I'm glad you said something that I tried not to say, because I said to you before the show that, I had a rough morning, so I'm gonna try and not be grumpy. So I didn't want to say what you said, but since you said it, now I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, we got to go there.
I called him Mr. Glass for obvious reasons. Anthony Davis has injury history. I saw him fall, and I was like, that's weird. Like, he's hurt from that, but this guy gets hurt from everything.
Yeah.
And then they threw that lob, and I was like, oh, they're trying to sell a narrative.
Yeah.
They're trying to convince us that if he doesn't play tomorrow, it's because of that weird injury that he had tonight. It's a bunch of nonsense, guys.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Exactly. So with that said, because of that specifically, not completely, that kind of put me over the top of saying the Lakers are just going to give a minimal effort and do just enough to come out with a victory. And for that reason, I want no parts of the over. I'm taking the under here. Let's move on to the next game. Kings at Suns. Another one of these spreads where it's probably correct. It's probably the right number. But at this point of the season, it's not a number that I'm interested in. I'm a huge Suns guy. I'm a huge Suns believer. I love what they do. I believe in what they do. The thing is, though, the Sacramento Kings are not awful. The Sacramento Kings are not good, that's for sure. But they've got pros. They've got guys that can put the ball in the basket. They've got guys who want to get paid the next time they're eligible to sign a new contract. They have guys who are auditioning for new teams. Buddy Hield, if you're wondering who I'm talking about. They've got a bunch of guys that have motivation for their own personal reasons. I think one of their biggest motivations as individuals to play hard is, like I said, so another team sees them and saves them from this dumpster fire that is the Sacramento Kings. So I say all that to say I'm not ready to disrespect the Kings by laying 8 with the Suns, because even though the Suns look good, there's something that just doesn't all the way convince me that I can be laying this type of spread with them. I mean, I'm being Captain Obvious. They're 1-2, so obviously that's one of the reasons why I feel like that. But their offense just doesn't look all the way right. You know what I'm saying? I am encouraged by their defense, and then until they let the Blazers put up a $134 on them. Now, again, that was a back-to-back situation, so I'm willing to kind of write that off. And if there's ever a get-right spot, I'm gonna name you a get-right spot, Jordan. Here's the Suns' next 4 games: the Kings, the Cavs, the Pelicans without Zion, and the Rockets. So I'm gonna say that I'm laying off them now, but as of Saturday, because they're off from now until Saturday, and they didn't play since Saturday, so they really only have one game for the next few days. Tons of practice time. I think that this is where the Suns kind of become who they expect to be by taking advantage of these poor opponents. Because we saw last year, they don't play down to their competition. They kind of bring the same effort every single night, and situational things make them lack effort, like back-to-backs, long travel, et cetera, et cetera. The same things that affect every team. I'll stop talking now because I feel like I'm rambling. I like the Suns, not at -8. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. The spread kind of seems correct. And one thing you just mentioned, like the Suns kind of just, they don't have much. They don't have much to play for right now, and the long season last year carry over to this year, and the short layoff is probably still weighing in on them. And until they get their groove, like you said, like kind of through this stretch, like I think I'm probably going to lay off as well. One thing I want to touch on, though, that kind of caught my eye on this game, you look at the kind of analytics so far through 4 games for all these teams. You kind of look at like things you expect to continue and anomalies that you expect to change. Look at these two teams in pace. The Suns are dead last. The Kings are like top 10. That probably continues right throughout the rest of the year. That's pretty much how we expect these two teams to play at current form. But if I would have told you through 3 or 4 games that we'd be here a week through the season and we'd be talking about the Kings and the Suns, and I would told you that one of these teams would have a defensive rating below 100, and one of them would be like lower third in the league, you'd probably be like, yeah, it's the Kings with the one the lower third, and the Suns are the good defense. So it's been the opposite. So that is something that I'll be watching with this game tonight, just simply because I think that if the Suns do get right and can kind of start to continue to, build upon some defense and limit the Kings to kind of slow them down and make them play the Suns style of basketball, the under could be a great play here in this one if the Kings defense still kind of is for real. I don't know if it is yet, but these guys, like you said, they play hard. That's literally like 80% of defense, just like effort. Effort is like most, and maybe not 80%, but it's definitely a majority of it. You probably agree with me in that. So if you got some young guys who are motivated and a couple of guys who are pretty talented on that end of the floor as well, like you said, I mean, Harrison Barnes, I don't know what happened to him in the offseason. But something's happened, and he's turned back into two-way Harrison Barnes like monster from like 5 or 6 years ago. So I mean, there's some potential here for the Kings to cover, I think, on the spread side. But for me, I'm really interested to see if the Suns' defense improves and the Kings' defense is for real here.
Yeah, I would just say that because I said that the Suns look okay on defense, and you're saying they don't look good. So I just want to elaborate on that. The metrics definitely don't look good for them, but I think that part of their problem is that the increase in pace has those numbers looking a little wonky because it's just a small sample size. When you let a team put up a $134, it's not going to make your defensive metrics look good. I actually think that the fact that they allowed only 110 and I think 107 in the first 2 games despite playing at a faster pace is actually a good sign for them. There's going to be some adjustments that need to be made, but as of right now, I cannot get involved in spreads like this unless I think the team that you're playing is a lame duck team. And I think in the long run, the Sacramento Kings are lame ducks in the sense that they got a bunch of guys that don't want to be there, a head coach that probably should not still be there. Excuse me. They've got a bunch of stuff that they need to sort out. So I'm going to stay away from them. And it's really not just that I'm not sure what the Kings are, because every season the Kings have this period where you're like, oh, damn, look at the Kings, though. And then you're like, no, that's not what's happening at all. So I actually I'm afraid of laying this many points against a Kings team that have a bunch of guys that when they get hot, like you mentioned, Harrison Barnes, if just Harrison Barnes and either De'Aaron Fox or Buddy Hield get hot at the same time, they can cover any spread against any team. Doesn't mean they'll win. But considering the market does not respect them, the spreads are usually favorable for them as road dogs anyway, if you're looking to back them. I feel like I've spent way too much time talking about this bum-ass Kings team. So let's move on to a much more interesting game, a game that I don't have money on, excuse me, but I'm interested because of the narrative. It's the Grizzlies visiting the Blazers. I was actually on my computer right now trying to get into my account to make a Ja Morant pick. I did just make a Blazers plus 120 on the money line pick, though. It's not one of my officials. It's just me personally. If the Blazers were a stock, I would have sold every single piece that I had a long time ago. If you know me or if you followed me, you know that I've never believed in the Blazers, so that shouldn't be shocking. I don't like what I see from them at all. They played well in the last game, I suppose. But Damian Lillard looks terrible. And guess what Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum don't do? They don't play no goddamn defense. And if you're going to tell me that Ja Morant is going into a game where he's looking at 2 guys that he knows for a fact can't even come close to stopping him, yet in most basketball circles are more highly rated than him, I see a motivated Ja Morant, especially after what happened in Los Angeles with missing that free throw that would have sent the game into overtime. He looked like a goddamn superstar in that game. If Ja Morant was a stock, I would be all invested, all in on that shit, because I think he's going to make the All-Star team. I think that he's leapfrogged a couple of our favorite guards. I don't feel like being controversial, so I'm not going to name any names. Russell Westbrook. I'm all in on Ja. I'm all in on Ja's supporting cast. I wish Jaren Jackson Jr. would be more aggressive, but I just feel like everybody around Ja has accepted that he's the guy, and we're fine with being his supporting cast. Melton looks like a different player. A bunch of Steven Adams fits in with them perfectly. I like what I see out of Memphis, and I'm taking them on the money line in this spot because I don't like Portland. Anything about Portland at all, starting with Chauncey Billups. Your thoughts?
I am in pretty much complete concurrence outside of just maybe like, I don't want to like definitely judge Chauncey Billups through 3 games, but like, yeah, the wheels are, you kind of saw the wheels coming off of Portland before the season started. Like we've gone over that. I don't want to linger on that too much, but the Grizzlies, on the other hand, I want to buy stock in all of the Grizzlies. They still don't have Dylan Brooks tonight, but I mean, Desmond Bane is an absolute monster on both ends of the court. And you're right, Ja Morant at this point, if you don't have him on your point guard Mount Rushmore, at least of guys who are like actively playing right now, so obviously Kyrie, Jamal Murray, these guys don't kind of fit into the conversation. I was tweeting about this the other day too. It's just absurd that like. And Luka Doncic is not a point guard in my eyes. He's a point forward. The dude's huge. He's like LeBron, just like an inch shorter and not as athletic. Like that's the only difference. He's not really a point guard. And James Harden's a shooting guard. Like if you kind of leave out some of those guys and the guys that aren't playing, like Ja Morant's right up there as the top 3-4 point guard in the league right now. He's done. I think I retweeted this too. He's the first player since Shaq to average 35 points per game as a 21-year-old through his first 3 games. Do you understand how like crazy that is? He's 6'2", he's not even 200 pounds, and Shaq was 7 foot and 300 pounds doing that. Like that is incredible. Like if you don't give Ja Morant the respect he deserves, I'm sorry, you're fast asleep. And this Grizzlies team, you're right, has the potential I think tonight to win outright, and it's almost silly that they're taking points. But at the same time, like, yeah, you're right. It's got to turn around for Dame at some point. Like, this team is a little too talented at the exact positions that the Grizzlies are kind of strongest. And they've actually been really good rebounding the basketball this year, which is a little bit surprising. But the fact that the Grizzlies are just so hard to guard and they have so many guys, on top of Ja, obviously, there at the top, and Jaren Jackson Jr. that can give you buckets, it's going to be tough for them to match up defensively tonight. So, yeah, I definitely leaning towards the Grizz. I just haven't gotten there yet. I kind of want to believe right now, but the defense is be a little concerning here. And if this gets into a shootout, then it's kind of like a coin flip, and I just don't really want to invest in that. But yeah, you know me, man. Yeah, anybody who watches this show longer than a day or two knows that I'm a big Ja Morant stan and 100% on the Grizzlies bandwagon this year.
I mean, you're the only person I know that has a sorry, my brain is just
a Morant college jersey.
Yeah, you're the only person I know that has a Ja Morant college jersey.
I got 2 of them.
See what I'm saying? So, and that was before he was the number 1 pick. So, I definitely believe you, as should everyone else. Let's go ahead and review our picks and get these guys out of here so you can enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, for me, yeah, you want to go first?
No, you go first. It's fine.
Okay, I'll run first. Under 220.5 Hawks Pelicans tonight. I'm looking for a much lower scoring game than I think the books are kind of expecting here this evening, especially in the first half. Then one we get to talk about here, but a guy we seem to mention almost every time we talk about the Clippers, even though we didn't today, Ivica Zubac, Zu Alcindor, as I like to refer to him, under 8.5 rebounds tonight. Tough to fade my guy, but he just hasn't gotten the minutes. And his per minute numbers with only 20 minutes per game at 8.5 rebounds, like that's a ton of rebounds against a big Cleveland Cavaliers team, even though Cavs have kind of sucked at rebounding this year. So far, I'm hoping that continues with this giant starting lineup of 3 7-footers they have. But I digress here. I'll shoot it over to you. Those are my 2 officials for the show.
Yeah, I got the Celtics at -4.5, even though the number's not up there. Over the Washington Wizards. I don't like the Wizards team. It's not that I don't like their individual players. I don't like when I watch a team and I'm like, okay, so I'm watching this entire game and I'm not exactly sure what it is you guys are trying to do. And I say that because it's funny. You mentioned some of those guys that are not point guards. So a couple of years ago, I actually took a course from a former NBA scout on how to watch games. And he was talking about how they don't even really use those positions anymore. That you're either ball handler, wing, or big. So that was one of those things that I found pretty interesting. And in this game, the wings on Washington versus the wings on the Celtics, I feel like that's a massive mismatch here. I feel like the Celtics wings will look at this game because the Wizards have a style of play that induces you to play fast and play loosey-goosey. I feel like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum playing that way, they can put up some really big numbers. So I'm going with the Celtics here. It's as much of a belief in the Celtics as I am fading the Wizards. Pacers Raptors under 215.5. It's just simply two things. One, the Raptors are very seriously offensively challenged. Number two, the Raptors defense is still real. They still actually defend and they play good defense. So the ideal scenario for them, especially at home, is that this number goes way under this total. If not, they're going to get blown out. And finally, the Lakers Thunder. The Lakers with their fake ass injuries and not respecting the Thunder. They're going to show up and do just enough to get away with a victory, but certainly not going to put in the effort required to cover any type of spread or get this number over 218, because the Thunder are certainly not going to hold up their end of the bargain. Their offense is garbage. That's it for us, though, today. As usual, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it more than you guys know. You guys can show us your love by hitting that like button. It helps us out a ton. Please visit BMR, as in bookmakerreview.com. You'll find a bunch of insight on your favorite sports. You'll find myself, you'll find Jordan on there, as Jordan mentioned earlier. We really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck, and let's cash some tickets, y'all.
Let's get these unders.
Yep.